Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. I know that the NFL draft is going on, but more important to us, Sap, is we are in the middle of the playoffs, and the first round is almost completely over. We only have one series left to be determined between the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves. That could wrap up tonight, but we are still waiting to see. But everything else is all set. So we're going to take a look at the second round and do a little preview. And we're going to start with the series that is in our backyard here, Sap, the Celtics and the Bucks. I would say probably the most anticipated of the second round series. Both the series in the Eastern Conference look to be on paper fantastic.
The thing about this playoff, Jet, is let's say Memphis beats Minnesota. You'll have the top four seeds in the Eastern Conference, the top four seeds in the Western Conference. So there'll be 8 teams remaining. It would not be a shock if any team wins the NBA Finals, right? I mean, I would think Dallas, maybe Memphis, maybe Philadelphia would be longer shots than the other 5 teams. But I can never recall going into the second round of the playoffs where all 8 teams have a chance to win this thing. Normally, there's a couple of teams that are just happy to be there, and there's a couple of powerhouses like, say, Golden State when they had Steph, Clay, Draymond, and, of course, Kevin Durant. Anytime LeBron was involved, you kind of knew he was going to go to the finals. I mean, he went 8 straight years to the NBA Finals. This is the year where Celtics, Milwaukee, that feels like an Eastern Conference Finals, right? And so does Miami and Philadelphia. And then you go to the West. Heck, Phoenix had the best record this year, but they're going to have to knock out Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks, who are playing excellent basketball. Golden State looks like the best team in the West, and they're going to have to face, in all likelihood, Memphis, a team that matches up really well against them. So it's just wild. I would say the Celtics-Milwaukee is the number one series. We're anticipating that. Again, we're in Boston, so obviously that's close to home, but it is the defending champion, Milwaukee Bucks, against the Celtics team that, quite frankly, has been the best team in basketball since the middle of January. I mean, including the playoffs, Jet, they're 37-10 since the middle of January. They're playing great defense, offense. They're healthy now that Rob Williams is back. So that does look like the most appealing series, but all 4 of these second round series are going to be fantastic.
Yeah, really, we talking about for months how the Eastern Conference playoffs was going to be, sort of a murderer's row, especially after you got out of the first round. Now, we were expecting the Celtics and Nets to be far more competitive than it was. But I have a hard time believing that, we're going to see a repeat of that with any of these other series in the second round, Eastern or Western Conference, where there's just a dominant team or an outright sweep. So, I don't think that the Mavericks or the Grizzlies are capable yet of winning a title. But I definitely think all 4 of the teams remaining in the East have a legitimate chance and a legitimate claim to say that they could win the title. And I think the Warriors and the Suns, now that the Suns are back to full strength or relative full strength, Devin Booker's can't be 100%, but he looked pretty good and hit a huge 3 in their closeout victory against New Orleans last night. I think that Golden State and Phoenix both feel like they can absolutely win a title, and so I think, to me, there's 6 teams that can say, okay, we feel really good about our chances, and to be at this point in the playoffs and have still that many teams, that's pretty remarkable, and I think that's great for the league to be able to have that kind of parity. Where, like you said, Sap, we've gone into the playoffs in years past, and it's basically been, okay, well, we know what's going to happen here. LeBron's going to advance, and then he's going to meet Golden State, who are going to advance, and we'll see what happens there. That's not – listen, the finals did good numbers, and the matchup, once it got to that point, was entertaining, but the inevitability is never a good thing when you're talking about playoffs. You want there to be an air of unpredictability when you're talking about these high stakes games and these high stakes series. So the fact that it's so wide open, Sap, I think is exactly what the league wants. And it's great for the future of the NBA to have this sort of parity.
Yeah, you look at the Super Bowl last year, right? You had the fourth seeded Cincinnati Bengals against the fourth seeded LA Rams, and people were concerned that the ratings weren't going to be all that good. The ratings were outstanding. The game was pretty good. It wasn't a great game, but it was an entertaining, close game. So the unpredictability of the playoffs is a good thing. Although, as I said earlier, if Memphis takes care of business against Minnesota, the top four seeds in each conference will have advanced. But now these matchups look so intriguing. And I kind of agree with you a little bit with Dallas and Memphis, but I also think they're going to be pains in the butt to knock out, right? Because Luka, now that he's back and looking healthier than he was in his first game back after that calf strain, Dallas has been a surprise because they're playing really good defense. And Luka's not a really good defender, but they do play good team defense. And kudos to their head coach, Jason Kidd. Memphis is just the most relentless team out there. I mean, they're coming back from 26 down against Minnesota. They're coming back from 13 down in the fourth quarter. And John Morant can't hit a shot for the first three quarters, and then he can't miss a shot in the fourth quarter. And he had a dunk the other night that, quite frankly, took my breath away. I mean, that dunk the other night was something that you just don't see other than Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant do. I mean, even the great LeBron James, his dunks are a little bit different than that. Again, those guys are bigger than Ja. Ja's 6'2", so it just looked spectacular when he did that. And then he has a game-winning shot, and they're just doing all sorts of things. I agree. It looks like Phoenix and Golden State should meet in the Western Conference Finals, but Memphis and Dallas are going to make those entertaining series because, again, Dallas has Luka, who I think is probably the most skilled guy in the league, and Ja Morant in Memphis is just like a force of nature. So those will even be intriguing series. And in the East, just throw a blanket over the four teams, right, Jet? Because you're talking about Miami had the best record in the East with 53 wins. Then the Celtics, Milwaukee, and Philly all had 51. And then Milwaukee doesn't have its second best player, Chris Middleton. And Miami's kind of an ensemble with Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler, maybe less than 100%. And then Philadelphia can be a train wreck because we don't know exactly what James Harden's going to show up from game to game. So the East is going to be the one where you just look at the four teams and go pick one. It's as good as any other choice.
Yeah, and I know we're discounting the possibility for the Timberwolves to come back and win the series, which they could. I just feel like they're really talented, but they just don't play smart basketball. Charles Barkley and the TNT crew has alluded to this, and it's hard when you don't play smart basketball to be able to be a team that does. And maybe they might be more talented than Memphis. I think there's a legitimate
high-end talent. They probably are.
Made.
Yeah. I mean, if you were drafting these two teams, you'd probably take Ja Morant first.
Yeah.
Maybe Anthony Edwards second, Karl Anthony Towns third. Yeah. And then D'Angelo Russell's pretty good too, but it's just Memphis is a better constructed team. They play better defense than Minnesota. And yeah, Minnesota just always finds a way to do something kind of crazy at the end, whether it's a missed defensive assignment by Anthony Edwards or blowing a big lead or Karl Anthony Towns being immature and blowing kisses to the crowd when the game's not over yet. But I think that, Minnesota, again, their veteran player is Patrick Beverley, who you love, but he is a loose cannon. I think they're going to need.
He's crazy. He's legitimately crazy guy.
He's legitimately crazy. You need a veteran player. Maybe that's more of a stabilizing force with all those young players, but they've done a great job this year. I mean, like an Al Horford type guy whoever is just a veteran presence.
They're too stable. They need, they like Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley. Crazy. If that's, you don't want him flying the plane. He's not exactly Sully Sullenberger. So I think that Minnesota's done a fantastic job. And yeah, again, they're going to have to win 2 in a row to win this series. And they've had so many opportunities. They could have wrapped this thing up in 5 games. I think from a macro standpoint, they've outplayed Memphis, but from the micro, give Memphis the edge because they've been able to make the big plays down the stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point, Sap, and that that's why in the playoffs it's different than the regular season. It comes down to that execution, especially in the late games, and oftentimes the team that can play stretches of mistake-free basketball for longer, even if they're getting outplayed for parts of the, a long part of the game, will end up winning. Especially, water seems to find its level over a 7-game series. So, you can get away with it in a game or 2, but it's hard to win 4 games when you're making mistakes every game. And so, yeah, again, Minnesota could come back and win the series because they do have really, really strong talent on their team. But it does seem like Memphis is, they're the more well-constructed team, as you alluded to, Sap, and they also play smarter basketball. And it does seem like they have a clear structure of like, okay, John Morant is the leader of this team. Like, we're following his lead. He's going to take over the end of the games. Minnesota, I don't know who the leader of that team is. Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, Patrick Beverly, Chris Finch, the coach. I don't know, but it doesn't seem like there's at a point when things are going wrong that they have a guy who's going to rally the troops right now. Maybe it does become one of those young guys, but at this point they don't have it. And like you said, Patrick Beverly is too crazy to do that. And also he's not nearly good enough to be that player. He thinks he is. And again, this is coming from somebody, I love him. I'd want him on my team, but you keep, it doesn't work. If you're the sixth best player on the team to be the guy who's, rallying the troops, he shouldn't be the guy who has the ball at the end of a game. So that matters. So I do think that we're on the same page that Memphis will close it out. And Sap, just to transition into that next round in the West, and why I don't really believe too much in Dallas or Memphis is because the two other teams, Phoenix and Golden State, just has so much more experience in the playoffs than these two teams. Dallas, Luka just won his first ever playoff series last night. And if Memphis closes it out, that's John Morant's first ever victory in the postseason for a series.
Dallas hasn't won a series since they won the title in 2011, which I don't really want to remind myself about, but they did win the title. But it's something they haven't, accomplished in terms of winning a series. And look, I love Luka. I think he's, again, in terms of pure skill, probably the best player in the league. But the lack of experience and really the lack of high-end talent is going to put them behind the eight ball against Phoenix now that Booker's back and, you get a little time to get him even healthier. And Chris Paul is obviously playing as a man on a mission. I mean, in the wrap-up game against New Orleans, he was 14 of 14 from the floor, 1 of 1 from 3, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, 33 points. It's like that. Those are numbers that
virtually impossible to do.
It is impossible, other than like Wilt Chamberlain or Shaq. But those guys were dunking the ball or laying it in at 7-1.
Right. Giannis at the All-Star game last year,
right? Yeah, and that's an All-Star game. This is a guy who's 6 feet barely, right? And he doesn't have a lot of lift in his game. It's not like, John Morant's 6'2" and he takes off and he can dunk over everybody. Chris Paul's hitting like mid-range shots. Like he's creating space and he's 6 feet tall and he doesn't miss. Jet, in this series against New Orleans in 6 games, he had 68 assists, 9 turnovers. That's 7.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio.
He's playing
That's
at a
ridiculous.
remarkable level, really remarkable level. And the fact that, his age, and you got him and LeBron playing at such a high level. I know LeBron's not in the playoffs, but for his age, he was playing at a crazy level. But Chris Paul is aged like a nice wine, right? I know it's a cliche, but he seems to get better every year at this point.
Good cheese or whatever. Yeah, really, really good stuff. And the thing is with him, he was never a guy who played just on athletic ability. Like the point guards like Derrick Rose and Russell Westbrook and John Wall, and hopefully not John Morant, but these are like ridiculous athletes. They don't age as well because then they start to lose athleticism and they're not quite the same player. With Chris Paul, it looks like he could play for a few more years because he's just in total control. He's a highly skilled guy. He's so smart, and he's taking care of himself now better than ever. Apparently he's a vegan. So, he's taken hold of what he puts in his body and how hard he trains. He can play for several more years because it just looks like the game has slowed down for him, which it actually did throughout his career. So he's just fantastic, but that blew me away. 7.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. That's like Aaron Rodgers stuff. My favorite quarterback doesn't throw interceptions and throws a lot of touchdowns. Those are like weird numbers, like 2 to 1 or 3 to 1 assist to turnovers is outstanding. Same thing with quarterbacks, 3 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio is great. Chris Paul and Aaron Rodgers, maybe it's a State Farm thing, both have like ridiculous ratios. And Chris Paul does look like a man on a mission right now.
Yeah, well, I think we've said this before, Sap. Devin Booker at this point might be their best player, but Chris Paul is by far their most important player. Right. And we saw in their in their 2 losses in this series to the Pelicans, he didn't play well, especially in game 5. He had 4 points in that game. He was really bad. I mean, the assists are always great, and they're always going to be great. But he's their most important player. If he Booker at this point, in his career, you expect him to get going. Chris Paul's not looking always for his shot, but when he's scoring, they're very, very hard to beat. If Chris Paul is scoring, if he's not going to have another 14 or 14 game, but if he's scoring in the 20s and then he's going to get, his 10 assists, they become a very, very difficult team to beat.
And then Ayton was 12 of 14 from the floor. They were like 26 of 28 combined.
They're really well constructed. You said this all year long, Sap. They're really well constructed team.
They're kind of like an old school team. They've got the pure point guard. Booker is the perfect 2. Ayton is a legit center, right? I mean, there's not a lot of them around, but I've compared him to Robert Parrish, which is a massive compliment. I don't think he's quite as good as the Chief, but similar type player. And then you got Miquel Bridges, who was in contention for Defensive Player of the Year. He's a perfect 3-and-D guy, really good wing. And then Jay Crowder, who just keeps showing up on winning teams. And now you've got a good bench with, Cam Johnson, Campaign are 2 really good players. And when you need to bring in size, JaVale McGee is a guy who, again, is just always seems to be playing in the finals. So it is a really well-constructed team. There's other teams that you look at and you say, well, it just doesn't seem to fit right. They got a lot of redundant type skills. Whereas Phoenix, it's like, here we come. Here's the point guard. Here's the shooting guard. Here's the center. And here's the rest of the role players. So I think it'd be tough for Dallas to beat them. But I think Luka's good enough to win a couple games on his own. And they're just playing with a lot of confidence right now. And they do play defense, which is, again, a mentality which they didn't always have, but they have this year under Jason Kidd. So, they'll give them a battle. But, again, Phoenix should be able to get through that series and get to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I do think, experience matters. And Phoenix obviously was the Western Conference champions last year, and they won 2 games in the finals. So I think that is important. And, Chris Paul's still looking for his first ring. So, the team's rallying around him. And we agree Monty Williams is one of, if not the best coach in the NBA. So they have a lot going for them. And it's same with Golden State. They have guys that know how to win. And I think that is really important at this stage. And if you look at if you go and switch gears and look at the Eastern Conference, I think the reason that the Celtics Bucks series is so intriguing for a multitude of reasons, but the Bucks obviously are the defending champions, but the core of the Celtics team, Horford, Smart, Tatum, Brown, they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of times. Like they know how to win series. It's not like they've never won series before. And then the Bucks, obviously, like I said, won the whole thing last year. So it's 2 teams that know how to close out a team and have experience. And that is, I think, a big difference from the Western Conference matchups where you're talking about one team that has experience versus a team that doesn't have much winning experience in both the series. And in the other series in Miami and Philadelphia, Miami was in the finals in the bubble 2 years ago, and Philadelphia's had a lot of playoff disappointments, but they've also won series too. So there's a lot more experience on the Eastern Conference side of it in terms of playoff success.
Yeah, because Dallas and Memphis haven't been this far in a decade, right? And they've got 2 great young players who obviously scare the hell out of anyone, but do they have enough to break through against the more experienced teams in Phoenix and Golden State? And like you said, Miami in the East made it to the finals during the bubble, and Philadelphia still has high-end talent. And again, if James Harden's going to play like he did in Game 6 of the prior series, then Philadelphia has a puncher's chance in that series against Miami. And then you got to watch out for Jimmy Butler's knee and Kyle Lowry's hamstring. I'm sure they're going to be fine. And we didn't even mention Kyle Lowry, who won a championship 3 years ago with the Toronto Raptors. So, and again, they have a coach in Eric Spoelstra who won 2 titles. And at first, when he won those 2 titles, it was like, well, it's LeBron, Wade, Bosh. He's just along for the ride. I think he's established himself as one of the 3 or 4 best coaches, if not the best coach in the NBA. So the Eastern Conference, like I said, if you're going to put percentages on this, you might say, I wouldn't quite go as far as saying each team has a 25% chance of winning the conference. but you would say maybe one team has a 30% chance, one has a 25, another one has a 25, and another one has a 20. I mean, it's that close. Like, I would be somewhat surprised if Philly broke through and got to the finals, but even then I wouldn't be, because you have a dominant player in Embiid and a guy in Harden who, if his game is up to par, can dominate a series as well. They're just not deep enough, I think, to get through these other three teams, but it wouldn't be a shock if Philadelphia made it to the finals. But the other three teams all look like championship timber.
Yeah, I mean that's Philadelphia's Achilles heel. Obviously, is their depth, and that comes into a big factor when you're talking about a guy in Harden and a guy in Embiid who haven't always been in the best shape, and so it's tough to play them. You know, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to be playing 40 minutes every game, if that's, you know, and Jimmy Butler, if he's healthy, he's probably gonna be playing 40 minutes. And, you know, I'm just talking about other guys in the conference. Giannis plays the entire game. I don't know that Harden or Embiid can do that. If it's a 7-game series, if they do, by the time it's game 6, game 7, that's gonna, you know, really take its toll.
It takes a lot out of them. And that could also happen with Golden State and Phoenix a little bit with Chris Paul in Phoenix.
But
again.
He knows how to pace himself. That's the thing.
He does. That's true. And in Golden State, they're deep enough, and you know, I don't think Steph's going to wear out. We've seen him win 3 championships, and he's in great shape. Yeah, and Draymond's in great shape, and Klay Thompson, they're pretty deep. But those are all good points. But this is going to be a fun second round for sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at this Philadelphia Miami thing quickly, and then we'll. I know I said we were going to start with Boston and Milwaukee. We'll finish with them. I completely flipped it. But in terms of the matchup, Sap, I think Embiid right now is one of, if not the most dominant player in the NBA. But if I was picking a team to have to counter that, it would probably be Miami. And it would probably be, if I had to pick a defender, it would probably be Bam Adebayo. I think that Miami is pretty as well equipped as you can be to defend what Philadelphia throws at you offensively.
And Miami can do everything, right? They don't have a discernible weakness, right? You've got a rim protector in Bam Adebayo. Butler's an outstanding defender, as is Kyle Lowry. Then you've got 3-point shooters in Hero and Duncan Robinson. So you have like everything covered with them. You're not going to go into a series against Miami and go, well, you know what? We've got a plan to exploit their weaknesses, because they don't really have weaknesses. Are they overwhelming? No, because their best player is Jimmy Butler, who we both love. But, you know, you can make a case that in the second round that Miami's best player is the worst of the best players. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
I mean, Embiid's better, Tatum's better, Giannis is better, Chris Paul or Booker is probably better than Jimmy Butler still, I would say. So Luka, Steph, and Ja. I mean, so
I think that's fair. That's fair.
But it's such an ensemble, right? Because now Kyle Lowry's the 2 and Bam's the 3. I mean, that's a really, again, like Phoenix, well constructed. Point guard Lowry, Butler wing, Bam big, who's versatile. Yeah, so I think that they'd be equipped to handle
shooters on the
Philadelphia, and then all these shooters. I mean, Pat Riley kind of knows what he's doing, don't you think? After 35 years of doing this and winning titles in different places, and almost winning one with the New York Knicks, which almost seems impossible to comprehend. But I think that Bam is a guy. Again, it's tough to deal with Embiid because of the sheer size and the skill level. He's going to get his, but you hopefully make him work as hard as he can. And also the fact that he's dealing with that thumb injury, which is not going to clear up till the offseason. So, you know, I'm sure that Riley, who's not afraid to maybe get the message to Spoelstra to don't be afraid to, you know, whack that hand a little bit.
Yeah, it's not that the Embiid can't overcome it because he's that good, but it's the worst matchup, I think, that for Philadelphia. Like it's the team they least, I would imagine, wanted to see. And the bracket broke that way. If Miami does have a weakness, Sap, it is, I guess, consistent scoring, because Butler is their best player and he's not a great shooter. And, you know, some nights if the shot's not going down, they can struggle to score. You know, it's helped that Tyler Hero has emerged so much as a scorer, especially off the bench this year. And you know, they have guys that can step up. But bigger than Embiid to me is James Harden has to play at MVP James Harden level for them to win this series, in my mind. Like, because Miami can at times struggle to score, that means James Harden really has to put it to them and, putting up 30-point games. And he's had an okay playoff so far. I wouldn't say it's been bad, but I certainly wouldn't say it's been amazing. He's had a couple very good games. He's had a couple mediocre games. But he's gotta step it up. And that's been the criticism of him, I think, fairly in the playoffs, is that he has not taken it to the next level when he's gotten into the postseason, even when he was at, the height of his powers in Houston, and he won an MVP, and then he'd get to the postseason and he'd either be playing about the same level as he did in the regular season or slightly below, especially when it comes to his scoring average. And if you're one of the great players in the league and you're trying to win a championship, you need to play even better than at that level. Giannis did it last year in the playoffs. We've seen LeBron do it, countless years. Steph, all these guys that have won championships have great regular seasons, and then they take it to another level in the postseason. James Harden hasn't really done that in his career. And so Philadelphia, more than Embiid playing well, because I think no matter what, even with Bam on him, he's just so good. He's going to still get numbers. He'll play well. They can't win. Philadelphia can't win unless James Harden plays at an elite level.
Yeah, and again, the growth of Tyrese Maxey, who is such a young player, and he's going to have some games where he's outstanding, but then he's had a couple of games where he's a little off, which is understandable. He's a young guy. Yeah, Harden's the guy that has to step up, and he kind of flatlines in the playoffs, and it seems like as the series goes longer and longer and longer, he gets worn down. He's never been a slave to being in the best condition, right? I mean, you look at someone like Jimmy Butler, who looks like a workout warrior. I mean, Jimmy Butler is almost built like an NFL tight end. At times, it looks like he likes to play like an NFL tight end or an outside linebacker. So I think you're going to see that a little bit. And I would assume that, you rotate guys on these players. It's never just a mano-a-mano matchup. You kind of give them different looks and rotate them. But maybe in key moments, Butler's going to be on Harden, and he's an outstanding defender, and force some turnovers and get that Philadelphia offense out of rhythm. I think Miami, with home court advantage and with just the fact that it just is such a well-constructed team and deeper than Philadelphia, I think it's going to be a war, but I would ultimately feel that Miami's going to win this series.
Yeah, Philadelphia has just much less of a margin for error.
Exactly.
Like I said, Harden has to play really well. And Maxey, yeah, he's obviously an important piece, but that's a lot to ask of a second-year player. And, they traded their entire depth for James Harden. They made the big move to get James Harden. This is who they coveted for years, and that this was the piece that they were expecting to put them over the top. And so despite the fact that Embiid is clearly their one and clearly their best player, the pressure, I think, is more on James Harden. Like, you wanted out of Brooklyn. You wanted out of Houston. You wanted to go to Philadelphia. You wanted to play, with Embiid. This was the team that you wanted. You finally got the situation you wanted. You've had this postseason criticism. Now prove it. You think that you're an all-time great, and scoring wise, he is, but he needs to have, this is a monumental series for him, Sap. And even though Miami, I think, may be the best defensive team in basketball, there's a case to be made for the Celtics, a case to be made for the Bucks. Miami has a lot of these guys that they'll throw out hard. And like you said, Butler, Lowry, PJ Tucker, it goes on. That's how Miami's constructed. But if you are James Harden and you're one of these, players that is making crazy money and you're considered to be one of the great offensive players of all time, you have to be able to find a way to overcome that. And you have to be able to find a way to, help Embiid out enough where you're getting your 25 to 30 points and you're the reason that they're winning games. We know what he is as a playmaker. He's a great passer and stuff like that. He needs to be a scorer in this series. And so, like I said, the margin for Philadelphia is a lot smaller than it is for Miami. And I think that it all comes back to how James Harden plays in this series. If he plays really, really well, Philadelphia has a good chance to win it. If he does anything less than that, I think Miami should be able to dispatch them.
I just think Miami's tougher minded. When you got Butler, Lowry, the culture they've built there, I think they're just tougher minded than Philadelphia. If it comes that close, my money's on the team that in close moments is going to step up rather than step back.
You trust them more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is Doc Rivers part of a factor in the trusting too versus Eric Spoelstra?
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about Doc earlier in the week, and again, I love Doc. I do. I mean, again, I sound like a broken record. I remember in the '80s when I was covering the league, he was one of the best players to talk to before the game, not during the game, but after the game, win or lose. Doc was available to the press. He's great. I love Doc, but he's blown a lot of big leads, and then the prior series, they're up 3-0 over Toronto. Then it's 3-2. And then he's, kind of pushing back about, well,
Very sensitive about it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was like, I go back to in Orlando when that roster wasn't very good. And
right.
Chris Paul was out and then he was back. And then I'm like, that's not your job, Doc. I'm sure he's got a lot of friends in the media that can push back for him. He doesn't need to do it himself. It's almost like Aaron Rodgers telling everybody he should have 6 MVPs instead of 4, that, he should have won in 2012 and 2016. That's my job to do that.
Yeah, well, he doesn't
Rodgers'
have that
job.
many friends in the media. I don't know
That's
if that Aaron
me.
Rodgers does.
Maybe
just
me.
You.
It's only me and maybe Doug Gottlieb there at Fox Sports Radio. Certainly not Colin Cowherd and Skip Bayless for sure.
No,
he's got Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A. Smith's on his side with me and Doug Gottlieb. We're the 3 guys, and Pat McAfee, obviously. But I think that that could be a sensitive thing, and there's a lot of pressure on it. Philadelphia, it's a great sports town. If it doesn't go well, we know what's going to happen. Miami, they have a great culture there, but there's a lot to do in Miami. If they get knocked out, it's not the end of the world for people in Miami. They got great weather and all that fun stuff. But I just think Miami's a better defensive team and a better conditioned team. And that may mean something down the stretch, because Embiid, you always kind of get the feeling that he's just one fall away from getting hurt again. He's constantly on the floor, and Harden just doesn't ever look to be in shape.
Right now, and I know Miami's the 1 seed, and Jimmy Butler's looking for his first championship. He's really hungry for that too. But I do think all the pressure is on Philadelphia in this series, because they made that big trade. And regardless of, you're playing, even if Miami goes on and wins the championship, which, they certainly could, Philadelphia being eliminated in the second round is a massive failure, considering the expectations on this team and considering the huge move they made at the deadline. There's no way to spin it, even if it goes to 7. There's no way to spin it if you lose this series that it was a massive failure. So I don't know that Doc Rivers survives if they lose in this round. I don't know what they really do at this point. They hope to get rid of Tobias Harris, and you have people talking about bringing in Bradley Beal, but does Bradley Beal want to go to that situation? I don't know, but all the pressure to me is on Philadelphia, even though they're the lower seeded team.
The process has been going on for 10 years. They've yet to reach the conference finals. Like I push back when people say, well, the Celtics went to 3 conference finals in 4 years. That's somewhat of an accomplishment compared to what Philadelphia hasn't accomplished. They lost a tough 7-game series against Toronto with Kawhi Leonard's buzzer beating, doink, 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 doink off the rim, but They still lost. And last year, come on, you're playing the Atlanta Hawks, who, all respect to Trae Young, but it's still the Atlanta Hawks. You should have beaten them, and you didn't. And now this year, you're in a position to go up against Miami, who's, I think, a slightly better team than you, but you have, in theory, the 2 best players on the court, right? At least in terms of legacy, you would say
this
that
is what you wanted.
and Harden.
This is the team they wanted.
Yeah. You got the 2 guys. I mean, we love Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, but if we're power ranking the players in this series, it goes Embiid, Harden, right? And then Butler, Lowry, and we go from there. But normally, and this is how the NBA has changed a little bit, Jet. Normally you think, the team with the best player or the team with the 2 best players is going to win. Well, LeBron and Anthony Davis are a pretty good duo. They didn't even make the playoffs. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving is a pretty good duo. They got swept by the Celtics. Now you see these teams that are better constructed, more of an ensemble type team, like Phoenix, like Miami. I wouldn't say Golden State, although they're deep and talented. These are the teams that seem to be flourishing now. So maybe the league's changing a little bit for the time.
Yeah, and I think, it does level the playing field, because you can look at it and say, well, if we draft well and, we don't have to create a super team, and that, some of these smaller market teams can go, well, okay, well, we have a chance. We just got to be smart about it and build our team in a smart way. And so, yeah, I think that's great. And I agree with you. It does seem like right now that brains are worth more than, location or pocketbook or whatever, however you want to call it.
Yep.
Look at the Lakers are a perfect example of that. 3 humongous stars, and they didn't make the play in. So
Yeah,
I know you don't like to
Brooklyn as
hear
well.
that. Brooklyn as well.
But I criticized the Lakers all year. I didn't like the way the team was constructed. And yeah, you look at Brooklyn, with two great players and another player who can be great, but doesn't appear to want to play, and that's being Ben Simmons. But yeah, it's a little bit different now. And then we're even seeing like kind of a crazy thing with Dallas winning a series with Luka, and then who's the second best player? Spencer
Brunson.
Dinwiddie or Brunson? Yeah, I mean those are. But now again, I didn't mean to diss on Jimmy Butler, him being the worst best player of the final 8 or 9 teams. Brunson's probably the worst second best player of the final 8 or 9 teams, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because we'll go through this exercise.
He's
again.
playing great, though. I mean,
he's playing great. Yeah. I mean, Golden State's second best player is either Draymond or Clay. Memphis is in the running there because who's their second best player? I mean, they got like
probably
Bane or JJ Jr. Maybe.
Yeah.
But nothing great. I mean, the Celtics, it's Jaylen Brown. That's a pretty good number 2, right? I mean, Milwaukee. Now that Middleton's out, it's Holiday. So, but you get my point that Dinwiddie is probably the least talented. I don't want to say the worst, the least talented of the second best players. I mean, that's a good thing to throw out on Twitter. But you get my point. So, but they're still a scary team because they got Luka and they play defense. And again, Jason Kidd, who got croaked when he was the coach in Brooklyn and also as the coach in Milwaukee, right? it seems like he's kind of figured it out.
Third time's a charm.
Well, here's the thing: a lot of these coaches. I just want to say something here. When they coach LeBron James, they grow.
Oh, I see.
All right.
I like how you did that. That's
Ty Lue, right? I mean,
he gives them the rub.
He does. Okay. He won with all different coaches. Michael Jordan won with one coach. Kobe won with one coach. My guy won with all different types of coaches. So you get him in there.
If you really want to grow, if you want to improve as a coach, go be the assistant coach to LeBron James.
Well,
Frank Vogel didn't appear to get any better.
Well, no, that's true too. But he did win a title with him. And look, I mean, LeBron bought 2% of the Fenway Sports Group, and they got to the American League Championship Series his first year. And the Penguins are going to make a long run in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, well, what's going on with the Red Sox this year? What's LeBron got to, how's he going to fix this?
Well, you gotta get some pitching. Actually, they're not hitting. That's the scary part. The pitching hasn't actually been that awful. It's just other than Xander Bogaerts, no one's hitting, and apparently the Red Sox don't want Xander Bogaerts.
Yeah, that's great. The Red Sox offered him $100 million less than what market value is. But we digress.
Let's not sign the guy who's the face of the franchise, who's like the perfect leader, who's he's like their Derek Jeter. Let's just move on from him because there's Trevor Story's around who can only hit in Colorado, and unfortunately the Red Sox don't play in Colorado. Don't get me started with that shit. Go on to the Celtics and Bucks.
Red Sox got like 8 guys who aren't vaccinated.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. By the way, quick before we finish up with the Celtics and the Bucks, just a quick statement or rant about the NFL draft, Sap, for a second, because we talk about everything here, which I like. Mel Kiper's one job is to cover the NFL draft, correct? That's his year-round job.
Yep.
He's not at the NFL draft because he's unvaccinated.
Yep.
That's your one job, guy.
I know.
Literally your one job. Be there for the draft. And you're not vaccinated, so you can't be like, come on. That's pathetic.
Mel is very conservative, very much into conspiracy theories. And I know Mel. He may have forgotten who I am now because I haven't talked to him in a long time. But when he was breaking into the business, he's about 3 years older than me. I think he's 62. I'm 59. He sent me his first draft guide back in 1982. Sent it in the mail to me like randomly. I got it. I talked to him. I mean, we became pretty good friends. In fact, I went down to Baltimore because that's where he's from. I met him at a Colts Patriots game, and I used to always have him on my show. He was on Warner Cable, and then he got to ESPN, and I was freelancing for ESPN, and then he just like blew up to become the draft guru. But Mel's very, very set in his ways politically, I'll say. So I think he was obviously an anti-vaxxer. He didn't get it. But now you can do all these things remotely, but he should be there, but apparently you can't be there if you're not vaccinated.
I get that you could do it remotely, Sap, but I'm just saying, like, it's just, come on. Literally, it's the guy's only job is to be there. And
the draft.
Like what if they couldn't do it remotely super well? Like, I mean, is he just lucky that technology has caught up to
Yeah.
his anti-vax stuff?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's just
Amazing.
I thought it was ridiculous.
I was busy listening to Fox Sports Radio's coverage of it, and Jay Glazer had all the picks like 3 minutes before they actually were announced, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's Twitter has literally is like 3 picks ahead of the actual NFL draft.
Albert Breer is like, I think already knows what's going to happen like Saturday.
Seems except like for the no one can tell what the Patriots are going to do. No one knows what they do.
No one even had footage of the guy, which is Bill Belichick at his best.
They didn't even know he existed.
Who is this guy? He's a 6th-year player. He played 6 years of college, so he's kind
of
the
only person on the face of the earth who knew him was John Sereny.
Oh, absolutely. Love the pick. Absolutely. Thought it was a great pick.
But all right, moving on. The NFL draft continues tonight, but Celtics Bucks, which is what we're really looking forward to. That's the main, to me, obviously, as a Celtics fan, the main event of the second round. On paper, it should be a tremendous series. The big wrinkle in it, obviously, now is it looks like Chris Middleton is going to miss the whole series, according to Shams. Woj has also, reported that too. Mm-hmm. There's always, a chance that he responds well to treatment and, gets in there towards the end of the series. But I think you have to go with the assumption he's not going to play in this series. And if that's the case, holy moly, is that a humongous break for the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, he's a Celtic killer, right? And
killer, absolutely.
He's also, I'm not big into who the closer is. I know Skip Bayless and these guys let that go. Well, Middleton's really the closer, and Giannis shies away from the ball late in the game. No, he doesn't. It's almost like, LeBron's only won titles because he had a closer in Kyrie Irving in Cleveland and Dwayne Wade in Miami and Anthony Davis. I mean, okay, Anthony Davis doesn't even play much. How the hell is he a closer? He's more like a setup man. But right. I look at Middleton, and he's just a guy who just does everything well. He's a solid defender, excellent in the mid-range. He's there. I mean, but the thing is that the Bucks can still win without him. They look damn impressive against Chicago after being tied 1-1 in that series. And again, Chicago was depleted. They didn't have Lonzo Ball. Zach LaVine was kind of in and out of the lineup. They just kind of collapsed. I mean, they were good the first half of the year, not so much the second half of the year. They're going to miss Middleton, obviously. But the big thing with Milwaukee is how good they are as three-point shooters. And it's not just their guards or their wings, it's their big guys. I mean, Brook Lopez can shoot three-pointers, as can Bobby Portis. So, again, the whole game is going to come down to Giannis is going to try to break through the wall if you create the wall. And if he's not able to, he's going to kick it out to the perimeter shooters, and they get a bunch of them. I mean, Grayson Allen shot 58% in the Chicago series from three. He was 14 of 24. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's like, those are numbers you see in the three-point contest at the All-Star weekend. That's really, really good.
And he's been very good for them all year long.
He could shoot.
It was a good pick. It was a really good shrewd pickup by Milwaukee.
Isn't Milwaukee kind of constructed a little bit the way Cleveland was constructed for LeBron in the second stint there, or even when he was in Miami?
Yeah, shooters.
Just surround shooters. Because if you have to help to try to keep LeBron or Giannis away from the cup, well, you're going to have some open shooters. That's why I don't understand how the Lakers were created differently. I mean, like Russell Westbrook is the worst fit for LeBron. He can't shoot. With Giannis and Milwaukee,
and now you want them to trade for Ben Simmons. So
no, that's true too. Yeah, that's even goofier. I know. Although Kyrie would be good if he showed up to play. But the thing is, now you've got all these shooters. Connaughton can shoot. Holiday can get streaky and get hot. Obviously, Lopez and Portis can all shoot. Wes Matthews Jr. can shoot. That's going to be the big part of this. Now, the thing about the Celtics is because they're such a great defensive team, they can kind of build that wall and still kind of defend the rim with the likes of Rob Williams or Horford or Tice or whoever, even Grant Williams. Not that he's a rim protector, but he's a physical player. But the Celtics can do that and also cover the wings because of Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart. So they're one defense that can kind of do both. Normally, you can only do one. Okay, we're going to build a wall and stop Giannis from getting to the basket, but we're at the mercy of Milwaukee's three-point shooters. The Celtics can do both, and I think that's going to be a huge part of the series. And you said it, Jet. Without Middleton, that could be the deciding factor in this series.
Yeah, because he plays so well against the Celtics too, and he's good at he's got a mid-range shot. He can drive to the basket. He can shoot threes, obviously. And he's a winner. and reliable, and he's played with Giannis for a long time. They know each other's spacing in games so well. As far as the defense goes for the Celtics on Giannis, I don't know that building a wall even works anymore against him because he's evolved so much as a playmaker. He's not LeBron, but he knows how to counter it by just kicking out. And like you said, they have all these guys who can shoot threes. So if I'm the Celtics, I don't know if I focus so much on trying to build the wall or stop Giannis. Maybe if I'm the Celtics, my defense is more keyed in on, let's not let Grayson Allen and Bobby Portis and Drew Holiday beat us. But Giannis, okay, the guy's going to score, at will. He's going to get to the basket. He's going to rebound. At this point, there's nothing you can do about it. Similar to in the early 2000s, like, what were you going to do against Shaq? Realistically, what were you going to do against him? There wasn't anything you can do against him. Unfortunately for teams playing the Lakers, he had Kobe too. So like, okay, you want to slow him down? They have Kobe. So Milwaukee's not that. They don't have a Kobe Bryant, to the Shaquille O'Neal. So I worry a lot less about Giannis if I'm the Celtics. I don't think you have to solve the Giannis problem because I don't think there is a solve to it. I think you say we cannot allow Grayson Allen and Bobby Portis to beat us in this series. We can't allow it. So I think that they, focus more in on frustrating those guys. And like, if Giannis scores 40 and those guys don't have good games, they're not winning the game. I don't care how well Giannis plays. So I don't, I'm not in the Celtics brain trust or locker room. I don't know what their defensive strategy is other than it's going to be very different than what they had against Brooklyn because you can't be physical with Milwaukee because that's their game. I defensively, again, am focused a lot more on their role players and their 3-point shooting and not allowing them to get going and not allowing Grayson Allen to shoot 50% for three and have a 20-point game. Because, again, Giannis, no matter what you do, is going to get his numbers. You can't survive Giannis getting his numbers and Portis and Allen all having good games. You can't beat Milwaukee if that's going to happen. So you have to take away things that I think you can actually take away. And so you got to look at those secondary players and say, okay, we can make Grayson Allen have a bad game. I don't know that that Giannis can have a bad game. I don't think he can at this point.
Do you send him to the free throw line where he's a 72% free throw shooter? I think he's kind of broken through that block. And I give him so much credit because a lot of times when guys struggle from the free throw line, they avoid going to the free throw line. He didn't care. He just kept plowing ahead last year to the point where in game 6 against Phoenix, the clincher, he went 17 of 19 from the free throw line, had a 50-point game and was just absolutely magnificent, not just in that game, but in that series against Phoenix. So do you foul him a lot? Obviously, you try to get physical with him, but that is his game. I mean, he's a force. So, it's not like Kevin Durant. Well, okay, let's get physical with Durant.
He's the strongest player in the league, I think, Giannis. So
he may just be. I mean, look, we're comparing him to Shaq. He's Wilt Chamberlain in terms of look, I know people will flip out when I say this. Kind of like a young Wilt. If you saw any footage of young Wilt, was built exactly like Giannis. Like Giannis is 6'11", about 250. Right. I mean, he's just strong and long. I mean, LeBron's probably in that discussion too. They're probably the two strongest guys in the league. Like, who the hell wants to get in their way when they're going to the basket? But yeah, I think he's just such a force. And again, he's unselfish. He'll kick the ball out. He's a very good passer. He really is. I mean, the guy is averaging over 6 assists a game.
He's gotten so much better at it. Yeah.
And they're not by accident either. I mean, his passes are right in the shooting pocket to Grayson Allen or Connaughton or Holiday or whoever. Pick anybody that's going to get open. So yeah, that's going to be an issue. Look, the plan would always be. This is going back many years ago when Casey Jones was coaching the Celtics. I know I'm going in the way back machine here, but Casey Jones, he coached the Celtics, but also played for the Celtics when they were beating the Lakers regularly in the NBA Finals. He was like, there was no stopping Elgin Baylor or Jerry West. I mean, you weren't shutting those guys down. Talking about two all-time greats. He says the key was we didn't want the other guys to beat us. So Giannis could go out there, get 35, 15, and the key is how many assists does he get? Yeah. Because now that means other people are scoring. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point. You can use some fouls up because you're pretty deep with big guys. And, again, I think what you have to do against these great players is just give them different looks. Like you can't do the same thing every time down the court. Maybe you rotate different guys. Maybe it's Horford to start the game. Maybe Rob Williams on some possessions. Marcus Smart can cover him for a few possessions. He's just bigger than everybody and stronger and more athletic than everybody. Then you throw Grant Williams in there, who's kind of a PJ Tucker type guy. Look, he'll swallow up everyone. Like you said, he's the best player in the league, period, end of discussion. And he also now is a guy who is a champion. So there's some pressure off of him that he can just go out and play. He doesn't have that hanging over him like Charles Barkley did throughout his career, or Karl Malone, or Patrick Ewing, or now James Harden.
Or Chris Paul.
Oh, Chris Paul. Chris Paul's got a ton of pressure on him. This is about him winning. Giannis is a champ, and he's going for back-to-back, and I think he's assumed the mantle as the best player in the league. So, yeah, I think the key is just giving different looks and also hunting some of those other guys on the other end of the court, right? So Grayson Allen, he's on the court, he's hitting threes. Well, make him play defense, punish him on defense, maybe get him in some switches, do some things to make him work his butt off on the defensive end so he's not as efficient on the offensive end. Those are things you have to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. You need to make them work defensively. Giannis, again, it's not work to him. He's going to be 40 minutes dominant defensively. What he's not going to. People are expecting this Giannis versus Tatum matchup. They're not going to be checking each other that much. No, it's just they're not going to. Even
they'll foul out. They'll foul out both of them. I mean, especially Tatum. I mean, Giannis commits a lot of offensive fouls.
That's what the Celtics, I think that's their best strategy, to try to slow him down and try to draw charges. The Celtics are probably the best team in the league at doing that, but the refs aren't going to foul out Giannis.
No.
It's not going to happen.
Unless Scott Foster gets involved.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one game he officiates, they might try to foul out somebody.
They're stupid enough to do that. But, yeah, so they're not going to be going one-on-one. These one-on-one matchups generally don't happen, because you don't want your star player to have to draw the best player on the other end of the floor. I mean, now you're asking for a lot. So the matchup is going to be the Tatum Giannis thing is going to be at the end of the game what their numbers look like versus at the end. They're not going to be guarding each other all that much. For certain possessions, sure, but on switches, but there's not. That just doesn't happen where you say, okay, our best player, your best player, one-on-one the entire game. Like that's not how you play anymore. It doesn't serve any purpose. But so we talked about the Celtics defensively. Offensively, I think do what you did against Brooklyn. Get Tatum going, get Brown going, try to attack the basket as much as possible, and then you have the role players come in, and if they're going to double Tatum, double Brown. Same thing we were talking about with Giannis, that these guys will kick out and hit threes. And that's the Celtics strategy, spacing and shooting. And you have two elite scorers. You have Tatum, who's, I think is trying to really prove a point right now in this postseason about where he stands in the NBA hierarchy. So I expect that the Celtics will probably try to have a similar offensive strategy. I don't think they're going to change that up that much. Their bench is going to have to play well, just like they did against Brooklyn. And I would like to see the one person who didn't step up against Brooklyn was Derek White. I'd like to see Derek White have an impact on this series. I think that would be a big boon to the Celtics. Even if he can help on the defensive end, right? So that, you can maybe rotate Smart on some other people. You would think Smart and Holiday are going to match up at some point, and maybe neither guy will score because they're both such great defenders. I mean, that's like Marcus Smart looking at his older version, right? And Drew Holiday. And Holiday's a better shooter than Smart, and I think Smart's a better defender at this point in his career because he's right in his prime, and Holiday's a little bit older. But that's going to be an interesting matchup. But maybe you can kind of switch things off, and if Derek White can come in and do a few things. I thought he played pretty well in Game 4. Hit a couple shots, did his role on defense. So yeah, because he now lengthens the bench. Now that Rob Williams is back, and again, I don't know how much Williams is going to play. I mean, it's not that easy coming back from that injury. Is he all of a sudden going to be 30 minutes a night? I don't know.
And I don't know that this is the type of team that it's super important that he plays a lot at. Against Brooklyn, I thought it was more meaningful. Unfortunately, wasn't healthy because, Kyrie does a lot of floaters. They're attacking the rim. What's Rob Williams going to do? Getting Giannis? He's not going to block Giannis. Like, as great as Rob Williams is defensively, Giannis is, it's like going against a Mack truck that can dunk.
He is.
So
I've compared him to a giant Russell Westbrook in terms of like energy and athletic ability. Obviously,
he could be a great shot blocker. It doesn't matter. He'll
no,
go through you. He's not trying to go over. He's going to go through you.
Yeah, your wrist will end up in the basket. So yeah, I mean the guy is playing with incredible amount of passion and force and everything. So I think the Celtics. This is a tough series. I mean, it's tough to pick against Milwaukee because they have Giannis. They're the champs. If Middleton was playing, this would really be flip of coin. I think the Celtics are going to win this thing, and this could be the NBA championship because I think either of these teams can beat Miami. I still think they have more high-end talent, although Miami's so well coached and well constructed. And then, who knows what would happen when you get to the finals, whether it's Phoenix, Golden State, or any surprise team. But I think this is going to be a magnificent series. And again, we've got a weird setup with the schedule: Sunday, Tuesday, and then not again until Saturday. And the only injury concern I have with the Celtics, Rob Williams obviously coming back, but also Jaylen Brown's hamstring. That's always a concern. He's a muscular, tight athlete. That's the thing about Brown is just the way he's kind of like Anthony Edwards. Like they're strong guys. Like where Jason Tatum is much more lithe. Like Jason Tatum's never injured. I don't want to jinx him, but he just has like the perfect body type to never get injured. He's very like lean and he doesn't have gigantic Jaylen Brown's a big dude, kind of like Anthony Edwards. It's sometimes those guys, they have to deal with hamstring issues from time to time because they're, pretty strong guys. That's one injury you got to watch out for, obviously. But this ought to be good. This ought to be a lot of fun, defending champs against a team that's been the best team in basketball for the last 3 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Celtics did well to get themselves home court advantage in this series. And so that could play a factor too. But I think because the Middleton injury, it gives the Celtics a little bit more legal room. And so I'll say Celtics in 6. Okay. But, I don't think that people can say, oh, Middleton's out, Celtics should win. It's a massive failure if they don't. It is going to be a bear to try to knock out the defending champions. Not just are they the defending champions, Sap, but they, like you said, have the best player in the world right now. So that is to knock that team out is going to be a very tall task.
Yeah, without question. And then, you look at those two teams, it's going to be a war, and it's only the second round of the playoffs. It feels like a conference finals or a finals, doesn't it? And it's like, look at the road the Celtics would have to go through. And look, I know they swept Brooklyn. They outscored them by 18 total points. So it was kind of a close sweep. I mean, that sounds like something Yogi Berra would say, that was a close sweep. But then you're going against the best player in the world. And then after that, you're going up against, in theory, Miami, well coached, well constructed, all that. And then if you get to the finals, it's, Steph Curry or Chris Paul. So, no lambs. Normally the first round, especially if you're a 2 seed, you got an easy series. And in the end, the Celtics did sweep Brooklyn, but it wasn't necessarily easy. But yeah, it would be quite a road. But I can never recall, Jet, going to the second round where all 8 teams, and I agree with you, Dallas and Memphis would be a surprise, but they have a puncher's chance to really wreck the party because they have Luka and Ja Morant, 2 great players.
Sure. I mean, we got a surprise last year in Atlanta. There's no reason a surprise can't happen. Sure. I'm picking the teams that have more experience. I mean, I think Celtics in 6, but again, it's going to be really hard. And so just going off of our prediction, Sap, it looks like we're going, we're being chalky and we're saying Celtics, Heat in the East, and then Golden State and Phoenix in the West. But I mean, I have no problem with that. I think that sets up for 2 tremendous conference finals. Yeah.
And the closest series will still be Boston, Milwaukee of all of them. I think again, Golden State and Phoenix, because of the experience, they would be considered the favorites, although Memphis would have home court advantage against Golden State. Memphis is not, and they're not frightened of Golden State. They knocked them out last year in the play-in tournament. Now, Golden State didn't have didn't have Clay. So a little bit different. But Ja Morant is fearful of no one. Like you could put Michael Jordan in his prime out there. I don't think he'd be fearful. That kid is just fearless. So that team is, man, that's got to be one of your favorite teams, I would think, because they play. Oh,
they're fun. They're really fun.
Incredible edge. I mean,
they just really want them to find, similar to Dallas, a second star to go with their star. That will take them to higher levels. Like they're a really fun team. Memphis doesn't have anybody who is, in my mind, capable of becoming a second star on their roster right now. And same with Dallas.
But Milwaukee, is Middleton really a second star?
No, but he's a multi-time All-Star at least.
Yeah. Well, I think
he's a 20-point a game scorer. Does Memphis have a guy who's capable of being Chris Middleton on their roster right now?
Probably not. No, and Dallas doesn't really either. I mean, Dinwiddie's a really good player, but yeah, I mean, if you could get that type of player to take some pressure off of Luka and Ja,
right?
I mean, those guys are so young. See, Luka's 23 and Ja's 22. I mean, just these guys are only getting better.
There's time for them to get better and for them to find teammates and fortunately, for both the teams, they have both very, very rich owners. Mark Cuban, we know he's willing to spend, and I believe Memphis has the richest owner in the league.
I think so. Yeah.
Besides Steve Ballmer. Sorry.
Steve Ballmer could buy the whole league if he wanted to.
So
literally, he has enough money to buy all 30 teams.
They'll spend.
And then you've got free agents who'll probably say, "Hey, that'd be pretty cool to play with Luka or Ja." Because they're both so great. Maybe that's something that can happen. But it's going to be a fun second round.
Absolutely. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Celtics get started on Sunday at 1:00. And then their next game is Tuesday. And then it's a huge layoff until Saturday for God knows what reason. But let's gear up for the second round. We're going to have plenty to talk about, continuing to do lots and lots of shows, talking about what's happening in each game. Things change and evolve, so we'll have lots to talk about. Make sure you stay tuned here to the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Type it in to find it wherever podcasts are found, or youtube.com/JetStryer. Make sure you also check out our social medias for updates on the show and other stuff. We're reacting to the NFL draft too, at JohnSap25, at JetStryer, and we are presented by Full Press Coverage, as always. Their website, great for draft coverage too, so check that out. And we will be back next week with some new podcasts, everybody. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.